I immediately noticed numerous irregularities with regard to development projects. To say the truth, I found this highly unsettling.
Franco Oliva, a financial controller for the Italian government, was sent to Mogadishu after the outbreak of civil war to overview relief aid spending. He filed a report demanding that Italian aid funding to Somalia be discontinued.
The minute I block these funds through my boring and bureaucratic objections and put my nose here and there in a bothersome manner, it's clear that I meddle with a number of interests.
In fact, he'd upset people enough to earn him a bullet in his right leg, yet Oliva managed to escape with his life and return to Italy. The attempt on Oliva's life took place just 5 months before the murder of Ilaria and Miran.
In the 80s, it was strikingly easy for Italian businessmen to open tanneries in Somalia, in the area south of Mogadishu. Even back then, many Somalis claimed that these plants were used to dump toxic waste coming from Italy.
Italian-funded development projects, such as the tanneries, were allegedly used to cover up the burial of waste along Somali seashores and countryside. One way to conceal toxic waste was to place it underneath the ground while digging wells, building streets, or during the construction of irrigation plants.
There were also other things that could spark suspicion. There were programs, especially in the agricultural sector, in which the amounts of displaced soil were particularly elevated in relevance to the project's aims.
Franco Oliva claims aid money was used to dig holes into which imported toxic waste was dumped. His account was confirmed by an Italian parliamentary commission of inquiry into the illegal dumping of waste in Somalia.
Hello and welcome back. In 1994, Italian journalist Ilaria Alpi and her cameraman Miran Ravatin were in Somalia investigating the use of Italian aid projects as fronts for arms smuggling and the dumping of toxic waste. But this was a story that someone didn't want told. They were both murdered. However, the story didn't end there, and 10 years later, evidence of toxic waste dumped along the coast of Somalia was uncovered by the 2004 tsunami.
We made 2 trips to Somalia. During the first one, we were trying to locate the sites identified by the UN, where the drums were washed ashore by the tsunami. The witness accounts were significant. Fishermen and local people spoke of malformations, hemorrhagic disorders and previously unknown diseases.
Luciano Scalettari is a journalist for the Catholic magazine Famiglia Cristiana. As well as examining the illegally dumped toxic waste brought ashore by the 2004 tsunami, he also picked up Ilaria Alpi's leads, suggesting that toxic waste had been buried along the Garowe-Bosaso road. The road had been visited and filmed by the 2 journalists just days before their assassination.
We applied the following method. We used a GPS to identify the sites and a magnetometer to immediately verify whether traces of metal were present beneath the soil. We also looked for witnesses who worked on the construction of the road, to whom we asked what they had seen, and that they accompany us to the sites where the dumping of waste allegedly took place. This is probably the most interesting site due to the extensive presence of metals underground. It's in a deserted place off the road, in a location where, technically speaking, there's no sign of human activity.
Famiglia Cristiana's reports shed light on an international scheme to bring waste from industrialized countries to developing ones. Scalettari's witness accounts are significant, but they are not yet supported by hard evidence because the equipment he had at the time could not dig deep enough to find the waste canisters themselves.
The receptacles are described as being small canisters, allegedly containing expired paint. In some cases they're sacks. In this case, specifically referring to the Bosaso-Garowe road and the sites thereof, it would be jute sacks and large barrels. A large container that would have been buried, and in the most alarming case, a number of awkward-looking drums. When we inquired about them in Italy, we were told that they were specially sealed receptacles used for the storage of fragile or hazardous materials.
So profitable was the business that extremely creative methods for the disposal of toxic waste were devised. We went to the house of Giorgio Comerio on the outskirts of Milan. He planned to drop free-fall penetrators filled with radioactive waste under the seabed of African countries, including Somalia. Giorgio Comerio has been investigated by Italian authorities for allegedly sinking ships loaded with toxic waste in the Mediterranean Sea. When Italian police searched Giorgio Comerio's house in 1995, they found Ilaria Alpi's missing death certificate. The document was seized by police, yet the investigating magistrate that later took on the case has filed a report in 2005 saying that the death certificate had been stolen from police archives. Today, Italian authorities say that they have no idea as to the whereabouts of Giorgio Comerio. Others, such as Giampiero Sebri, use more conventional dumping methods.
It might sound cynical, but I wasn't there to give away cookies or candy for children. I was there to import hazardous, toxic, or radioactive waste.
Giampiero Sebri acted as a local agent for an organization that arranged the dumping of waste in developing countries on behalf of Western firms.
If an industrial group or company, even a government company, has thousands and thousands of tons of waste to dispose of, I would set up a local company in a developing country. I would solve all logistical aspects, such as the ship and the containers. After that, I would load, unload, and that's it.
Sebri was also part of the so-called Project Urano, a plan to dump radioactive waste in Western Sahara, conceived by the same organization of international waste dumpers.
Something really strange happened while we were unloading our cargo. We were told that we could not dump the waste there anymore. This meant part of the load was still on the ship, while the other vessel that was arriving had also been traveling with its load of waste for 3 or 4 days. This boat was deliberately made to sink. The other was a ship that ended up in Somalia.
According to documents found by Italian police, following the failure of Project Urano 1 in Western Sahara, Project Urano 2 was devised. Somalia was picked as the new target for the dumping of waste in 1992. 4 years later, the then Somali president, Ali Mahdi Mohammed, signed this agreement with one of the project's associates, authorizing the building of a dumping ground in Somalia.
The value of human life is equal to 0. The only thing that they value is money and more money. They just don't care.
Hashi Omar Hassan has already served a decade in the maximum security prison of Biella in northern Italy for being part of the group that killed the 2 journalists. Douglas Duale is Hashi Omar Hassan's lawyer.
The
first-degree trial ended with an acquittal after 298 witnesses were brought to the stand.
In the year 2000, Italian prosecutors appealed against Hashi's acquittal on grounds that the defense witnesses were not credible. The appeal court overturned the acquittal, sentencing Hashi to life in jail. The Supreme Court later reduced the sentence to 26 years.
Hashi was on the list of Somali victims of mistreatments by UN troops in Somalia. Upon arriving in Rome, he found out that he was charged with the murders.
Hashi was condemned after 2 witnesses stated he was one of the killers. The crucial testimonies were made by Ilaria Alpi's driver, Ali Mohammed Abdi, and by another man who claimed to be on the crime scene, Ahmed Ali Rage, also known as Gelle. In 1997, a special envoy of the Italian government had been sent to Somalia with money to gather information on the killings. He came in contact with Gelle, who in turn allegedly approached Hashi, offering him part of the money in return for a confession.
Prior to his departure from Italy, Hashi was approached by Gelle, who offered him money in exchange for his confessions on the murders.
When Hashi refused Gelle's offer, he was lured to Italy in a different way. He was invited to testify about mistreatment allegedly inflicted on him by the Italian military serving with the UN. The minute he stepped off the plane, he was arrested for the murder of the journalists. Gelle accused him of being one of the killers, as did the driver, Abdi. While the latter was killed once back in Mogadishu, Gelle's credibility has now been put into question. Gelle says he was there, on the crime scene, during the shooting. He claims to be this person.
A photographic test has confirmed that this person is a man called